All right, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We got episode number 8, Lost in Ancient Civilizations. What's
Yo,
going
yo,
on?
yo, what up?
We
Let's get
got Goofy,
lost.
we got Goofy McGee over here. All right, let's start with the top dog here, the one that everybody's basically wondered about and everyone talks about is Atlantis. What do you think about it? Do you think it's mythical? Do you think it was actual civilization that just got destroyed for whatever reason?
A couple days ago, I was pretty sure it was fiction, and then I started doing more research on it, and I don't know. You believe Plato?
Well, I was going to say, so the story behind it originally, like where Atlantis comes from, was Plato's like mentor, this guy named Solon, was like a Greek like statesman, I guess you could say,
Yes.
and he went to Egypt and supposedly learned about Atlantis from the Egyptians and all the hieroglyphs or whatever they were showing him, and then brought that back, conveyed that to Plato. Plato, I think he first um, put it in one of his story. I think it was Timaeus was the one that initially showed up in, um, and
What do
I
you mean
want to
his
say
stories?
like he used to print like I don't even know what you would call it, um, like writings, like teachings. Anyways,
Okay.
that was I think 360 BC was when we first heard about Atlantis, and it's been taken two ways ever since. Some people see it as like an allegory, like a story, um, like kind of to teach humanity, like, look, don't, like Icarus,
Yeah, if you
don't
fuck
fly
up,
too
you're gonna
close.
get.
Don't fly too close to the sun. You might get burned, and if society keeps pushing the boundaries in negative ways, maybe that's what, or the other thing is there could have actually been an advanced civilization that thrived probably anywhere from like 14,000 to like 9,000 BC.
Well, is there anything that says that the people of Atlantis were living in a dark, way? Like not abiding by the laws of the earth or whatever, and that's why they were wiped out. Or
Yeah, I mean, it kind of talks about stuff like that. I don't, it doesn't get into specifics. I mean, there's been speculation there could have been some sort of like a plague or some disease. Could have been, obviously the top dogs are asteroid or comet impact, um, tsunami. I mean,
what about just the
so,
water rising?
well, yeah, exactly. So after the Younger Dryas era, for anybody that doesn't know, is the end of the glacial ice age, the last one. And I think that ended at like 14,000 BC. And then the water level slowly started to rise as soon as all the glaciers melted. But supposedly Atlantis was a seafaring community that was, they explain it as like concentric circles. So like a circle within a circle within a circle built in the middle of
Right,
the ocean. So if you think about it, I mean, if there was some sort of massive flood, I mean, you're in the middle of the ocean, you're kind of screwed. So
right.
maybe they,
Where do they think that Atlantis was located?
well, there's a lot of different speculation.
Oh, okay. So there isn't like a
Well, I
general
mean, for
area.
instance, like in Graham Hancock's Magician of the Gods, which is actually a really good book, he talks about, we'll get into this, but Sundaland, it's like this, now it's underwater, but it's this um, landmass that's submerged that was above, sea level at one point that connects like Southeast Asia, where like Java, Sumatra are, to like where Australia, like the corner of Australia. So I
Oh,
mean,
yeah. This is what you were telling me about.
his speculation is that could have been it too, because I mean, if that was some massive advances, you don't know, like in terms of like timeline stuff, it's so hard with all the, erosion and, water stuff happening. It's just so hard to, especially, I mean, like we know nothing about like underwater archaeology other than like keep digging stuff
Right.
up from the bottom and then kind of trying to figure it out, but
Yeah.
that's one of the untapped,
That's why I think we should spend more of our money on the fucking oceans instead of the, space.
right. Well, I mean, we can do both. Why not split it up, 50-50? You're like,
I think we should focus on our, if we need to learn as much as we can learn about the actual Earth we're on, then you can venture out into other, realms, whatever.
I'd
Not
say that's
realms,
pretty.
but
I'd say
another
it's
planet.
pretty wise, like don't bite off more than you can chew, kind of a thing. But having to do with,
Well, I mean, save the fuck. I mean, are we looking for answers to save our Earth outside of our atmosphere?
I mean, who knows? I mean, who knows what the agenda? I mean, I think there's private agendas going on with like the Tesla stuff, and then there's like
Right.
government ones. I mean, there's just a whole combination of all that stuff. But
Right.
Yeah. So back to Atlantis, I think it's weird because you're right. Like when you really look into it, it's hard to tell. Is it a story? Or I mean, I like to think it's real. I mean, like I said, maybe it wasn't as advanced as they say, or maybe they here or there's a couple like hyperbolizations of the city. But I mean, I don't know. And then they also think that it could be different places. Like it could be supposedly it was in the middle of the Atlantic, hence Atlantis.
Yeah.
Edgar Casey did a reading actually, and when he was under there, he supposedly said it was going to be found off the coast of Bahamas in Bimini, which is like, they do stuff over there. That's kind of where like Christopher Columbus, his routes and all those were down there too. So there's a lot of, I think there is somewhat some archaeology going over there. And then there's also, it's called the Bimini Road. It's this underwater, they look like steps, these big wood or stone steps underwater. They look like they're man-made, but then there's also scientists that are saying that can happen from some sort of coastal erosion too. So I mean, it's hard to tell some of the stuff, but yeah, Edgar Casey thought it was going to be found off the coast of the Bahamas. But what we're talking about is a rise in sea level. So who's not to say that it was part of what the Bahamas are now, or maybe like the Azores, which are a mountain range off the coast of Europe.
Wouldn't there be artifacts and stuff though?
I mean, I guess, yeah, but what if there was so much water and erosion and like crazy, I mean, everything was flooding and, like what if
right.
I mean, who's not to say that there's just hundreds, if not thousands of feet of sediment down there that
Yeah. I mean, I like to believe that, because the guy that was talking to Plato, what is Solon or whatever?
Yeah.
He was saying that that Egyptians, got all their information from the Atlantis community, and that's why they could build like the pyramids and all that stuff. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, when they represent it too, there's some weird correlation there between the Egyptians and the Atlanteans. Like, I don't know, maybe the Egyptians were so advanced for their time. Maybe they did either know stuff that the Atlanteans know, or maybe they were the people from Atlantis that, kind of moved on to a different.
That's interesting. With my calculation, it looks like Solon was 80. He died when he was 80. Did people live that long back then?
Yeah. Sure they did. I mean, I guess it depended. I mean, look, if Greece was different. I mean, Greece, these people weren't barbarians. They weren't like,
right.
I mean, they somewhat were still to a certain degree, but like even the Romans,
was the cream of the crop, man.
But yeah, I mean, if you had money or you were smart or you were an inventor or something like that, you were probably treated super well, So I mean, if you're like a philosopher or something, I would assume that you're taken seriously and kind of live a cushy life back then, which you probably could live to be 80,
Yeah, I saw that. I thought that was kind of uncommon, but I guess you're right.
Yeah, I mean, but okay, so most people say though Atlantis, if it were real, be between like 12,000 to 9,000 BC. Some people think that they possibly were this. Have you ever heard of the Minoan civilization? Like
Minoan.
Minoan. Off of Greece. Like, have you ever heard of the island of Santorini?
No.
Okay, so
I'm awful with geography, bro.
That's it's an island off the coast of Greece, and supposedly, um, they think that that's where Atlantis was. Like some guy's been doing tons of archaeology. There's a documentary on Netflix, a National Geographic one about Atlantis, and like what it could be or where it could be. And this guy I think it's just Atlantis. If you type in Atlantis in Netflix, it'll pop up most likely. But so he is proposing that Santorini was this because there was a volcanic eruption, and he's found like layers of volcanic ash, and then under that ash is like writings, carvings, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he's found pottery and he's found all sorts of shit, but I mean that could be part of this Minoan civilization, which they were considered pretty advanced for their time too. So I mean,
I might be mistaken, but were there like some carvings in Egypt saying something about the city too? I can't remember if I remember seeing that.
I don't know. I mean, that'd be interesting. I mean, I know he went to Egypt to learn.
Right.
They taught him about it, but I don't know if there was an actual hieroglyph. I mean, I assume back then, I mean, we just know what we see, but back then, if they're writing and carving all sorts of shit, who's not to say they had tablets left and right? These things just disintegrated or ruined. Or, I mean, who knows?
I like that theory, though. I like that theory about Egypt being part of that that society with that knowledge and all that. I mean, that would make a lot of sense for the pyramids and whatnot.
Well, even if you go like other YouTube videos or online and stuff, there's a lot of like people that like correlate it together just in general, like the pyramids and the Atlantis, because like I said, like the Egyptians were so advanced for their time, so maybe or maybe I mean, it's just so hard to say, but there's just so many different variables because of the like we were talking about the younger Dryas era. They're just learning about all this now and like what exactly was going on the earth. So
right.
I mean, it's hard to tell who was where when now, because there's all sorts of different conflicting, old school scientists and archaeologists are saying one thing. The guys that are doing a lot of research now are saying, let's take a look at this. There's water erosion around the Sphinx. There's glacial, huge dams breaking where animals are being like ripped off their feet, so they have like bones and everything to prove that. So was it like an instantaneous thing, or was it this thing that just built over time and sea levels just kept rising? I mean, I think there's a fight there, whether there was like tsunamis or if it was like an instant thing or like a gradual thing.
Right. I can't remember. I was looking something up. Did you say it was in between Italy and like by Greece and Italy maybe?
For what?
Where the location could be in the Mediterranean there?
Yeah.
That would be.
They said, well, that's where Santorini is, and also they think I mean, so some other spots could be like Malta, Crete, like I said, the Azores.
Yeah.
I mean, I've even heard like the Canary Islands and stuff like that, but
where the fuck are those?
In the Atlantic.
Because I was looking at this map. If it was in the Mediterranean, it would be perfect to flow right down into Egypt. I mean, they could have had. Plus, you were saying that there was a lot of rivers. I mean, that might be how they could have got the stones there and stuff. So who knows?
Yeah,
there might have been a ton of water around that area.
Exactly. I mean, and then who's not to say? Well, that's interesting, like to think about. I mean, this is just brainstorming. But like, what if the Atlantis was where Egypt was, but it was underwater, and all that technology was from Atlantis, and like the Egyptians just kind of tweaked it, fucked with it, whatever,
Right.
I mean,
but what was the technology? That's the whole fucking thing. There's stones. Seriously, there's stones, but what did they? How did they carve this?
Well,
shit?
I mean, there's different.
There's
different theories for like, okay, so like the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, they think that it obviously wasn't just some like burial chamber. They found like hydrochloric acid down these chutes, and then other minerals and other chutes. So they were like combining like chemicals almost to get a reaction. So this thing was almost like a big power plant type thing. So I've seen.
Aren't there ancient batteries that they found?
Yeah, they're called Baghdad batteries. I think it looks like a pot, but it like
Yeah,
somehow
that's exactly what it looks like.
there's like a bunch of acid or something in there in the way that it's concocted, and then it just creates energy from it. I don't know exactly how, but
Well, there's theories that it might be nuclear. Um, who knows?
yeah. I mean, the other thing too is, well, actually, the other interesting thing I was gonna say is that Graham Hancock also in Magicians of the Gods talks about, so like Antarctica on a lot of like older maps, like the Piri Reis map. When was that? The Piri Reis map was like 15. I don't know. It was like 1500 or 15 something. Basically 1500s, and excuse me. And basically it shows Antarctica like in the middle of the Atlantic, and it doesn't have any ice on it. So there's like multiple maps from like the 14th and 15th century that have Antarctica as being like this lush green forest with, like rivers running through it, mountain ranges, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, so who's not to say? And then there's also a theory too that I think Einstein backed up, which was, it's called crustal displacement, where when the pole, you know how we were talking about precession, which is like the wobble. So once it gets to a certain point, something happens and it either reverses polarity or something happens like that where it fucks with everything. And he's saying that there was some sort of crustal displacement, like some seismic stuff that like was pushing land, like crazy. And he was hypothesizing that could have been Atlantis, and it just moved further south, and then got from the end of the ice age from all the precipitation, then became super cold because it's at the bottom.
Right.
So I think that's kind of interesting too. And like I said, all those old maps show it as not being like an ice covered land.
So all the stuff you hear about Atlantis, they had this, they had that, that's all speculation.
Yeah, I mean, there's theories that they had like this death ray beam where they can, seriously, and there's some like massive crystal thing that would shoot up in the sky.
Right.
There's theories that they had flying machines. There's theories that what was the other thing? Like their energy was like from the earth, so it was like sustainable energy that was renewable on its own.
Yeah. Fuck.
So I mean, look, I mean, it's a great thought, and if it was real, it's definitely lost. I mean, I guess anything's possible. These people could be on some remote outpost. They could still be in Antarctica. Just live in the dream in Antarctica.
That's not the dream, man. That's the exact opposite of what the fuck they were just doing.
No, that's like that movie Alien versus Predator, where they find like a pyramid in like Antarctica, like under the ice deep, and they go down there, and it's these,
No, is it good? I haven't seen those movies.
It's actually not bad. I mean, I'm not a big Alien Predator kind of guy.
I like Alien. I like the original.
No, they fight each other. It's sick.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
It's awesome, but but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I think Atlantis is probably the best example of like a mythical.
I like that other place better. Well, I like Atlantis, but the other places seems more legit. Maybe.
Which one?
The Hy Brasil.
Oh yeah. So like So why don't you explain a little bit about Hy Brasil?
I don't know if I know that much, but it's an island that's like off of Ireland. Yeah. That you can only see like once every 7 years, like for a day.
Right.
Because the fog's so thick. So I don't know. I think you know some theories on that, but
okay, so
I know more of the myth behind it.
It appeared on maps. This one appeared on some of those same maps that I was talking about, and it from like 1325 to 1800. So that's a pretty big, range of time there where people were seeing this thing. Also, it's 200 miles off the west coast of Ireland. So I mean, it's far, but it's not that far. It's not crazy.
Right.
But yeah, like you said, is visible only once every 7 years.
I don't really get that though. You can only see it one day,
right?
Out of all those.
And we'll get into this too. But there is also what's known as Doggerland, which is actually a real landmass that's submerged around Great Britain. So at some point during the end of the last ice age, when water levels were lower, you would have been able to walk from like Britain to Italy because there would have been a land bridge across, East and West Europe. So
Damn, there's bridges all over the fucking place.
there's land bridge. Yeah, back then there was tons of land bridges. People were getting all over the place. Yeah, Hy Brasil. I guess it means High King of the World. I didn't know that. And it was noted specifically on a 1325 map by cartographer. He was from Genoa, Italy, named Angelino Dulcert. Yeah, I mean, it's on all these maps. It's just weird,
Yeah. I was watching people finding it on I guess they were speculating, but on Google Maps, they're saying this mass could be it or whatever. They found some shit in the ocean.
Yeah, there is some, I forget what it's called, but there is like a little bump up over there.
Nubbin.
But yeah, so I mean, and there's been tons of expeditions. Like 1497, a Spanish diplomat went there, and claims that he told later on, like a Catholic monarch of Spain, he told him, yeah, we found this thing. And then somebody went there to corroborate that, and then they said the same thing. Yeah, and then in 1674, a Scottish sea captain claimed to have seen it on his way back to Ireland from France, and he even sent 4 men ashore. And I think that's the story where we were talking about, where the men say that there's a magician or a wizard that lives there, and like a big stone castle, and that there's like a bunch of massive rabbits. Yeah, which that's a super weird story. I mean, that in itself just sounds crazy.
Yeah, but those kind of stories make the shit sound too much like lore, Well,
maybe maybe that's what they were going for. Maybe that's exactly what it is. We don't know. And some of this stuff could have been weird. They could have taken something like a real geographical instance, like for instance, how we were just talking about the sea level rising and lowering. Right. Well, if it's by that Dodgerland, at the end of the ice age, the sea levels were lower, and then they started to rise. Who's not to say there was some sort of fluctuation, and actually maybe people were able to see it sometimes, and other people, because of whatever fluctuation. If it's an island and there's a massive displacement of water all over the place, it could be there, it could be not there. I don't know. I'm just saying they could have taken something like that.
Is it going under, and then people are just fucking dying? 1 years.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, somebody could be living on like the mountain of it or something. But my point is that they could have taken something like that, like just some geographical anomaly like that, and turned it into a myth or like a story.
Yeah.
Kind of like what we were just talking about at Atlantis, how it could be like a lesson, kind of like here's what happens if you do this.
So like that story you were talking about with the aliens, where the guy touched the craft and then he downloaded all the ones and zeros.
Yeah. So
I was watching something that said that it led him to this area that could have been that place.
Yeah. So that's the Rendlesham Forest incident. I think it's 1980. Two office naval, or not naval, I think they're Air Force officers were sent to the site, and one of the guys got close enough to this craft. It was like a triangular craft with like a bubble in the middle, and he reached out his hand and touched the craft, and when he touched it, he instantly got flooded with like ones and zeros. So he went home that night and wrote like 16 pages of ones and zeros.
Coordinates.
Exactly what he was seeing. And then like 20 years later, they're like, back then I don't think they thought about it, or maybe they didn't have the computing power, but now they can take ones and zeros and turn it into a language or find patterns or whatever. So they took this thing, and basically what came out of this guy's ones and zeros that he had seen he had seen this in his brain for like 20 years, like through dreams, nightmares, just flashing, whatever. But all the numbers when it came out were like coordinates. So some of them, I think it was coordinates to the pyramids of Giza, coordinates to Hy Brasil, and it showed it was like 100 miles off the coast of Ireland. And the weird thing was at the bottom it said 8100. So like that's supposedly when that that craft was from, maybe like the future year 8100 or maybe the past 8100. I mean, I don't know.
That's some crazy shit, though. I'm digging that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a crazy old story. You don't know what to believe, but I just think
Well,
it's
if they're given coordinates, I mean, I guess that the fucking guy could have had the coordinates for the pyramids and stuff, and then just wrote those down, trying to fool people.
Yeah, that's
You
what
can
I'm
never
saying.
trust these humans, man. You can never fucking trust these humans.
I mean, but these were also guys that were in the Air Force. Like, what do they have to gain? I mean, I guess.
Right,
I mean,
but
it's a cool
still.
story or makes you look, whatever. But he said there was also like hieroglyphs on the outside and stuff too. I don't know. And the other guy corroborated the whole thing too. I mean, they could have been in cahoots with it.
Yeah.
But like we talked about on the alien episode, like these people, what's the benefit? Then they have to go report this, and then it's a pain in the ass. And it's just like we'd rather just move on from the situation. So
it's cool stuff, though.
Yeah. What? So let's get to the other one that we were talking about before was Sundaland, which, like I said before, was a landmass that's where like Java, Sumatra, Southeast Asia, there was a lot more land there, and it actually kind of connected to where Australia is, and that was. I think 18,000 years ago was the end of the last glacial maximum, which means that was like when everything was at its peak and then slowly started to, or maybe rapidly, they don't know exactly what happened, but over time, water, started to get, the water level started to get crazy high. There's different theories on that too. I've been hearing lately too, like there's, like just Africa is considered like the beginning or the cradle of Mesopotamia is the cradle of civilization, but cradle of life, and there's been a lot of speculation lately that maybe Australia was either like a secondary location, and that's why, some of these features on some people are just so dramatically different, or that it could have been like some of the people from Africa went over there and then, slowly ascended back up once the sea level, and then some people were trapped there. Obviously the Aborigines would be those people, but there's a lot of different theories on that. I think genetically they're doing some stuff to,
but this is an actual proven place, correct?
Yeah, this is not a mythical.
So unlike the other two, this is
the other two are mythical, possibly. I mean, we don't know, but those we don't, there's no proof on that. There's proof that this exists through science and geography and ocean study.
Yeah.
But there's this thing called the Wallace Line, and it's like a deep channel, and it runs in between where Australia and these islands are. So there wasn't like a actual land bridge, but if you were, it would be very plausible to take a canoe or a boat. We were talking about.
Yeah, those little canoes.
Yeah, those, they're the first to do like the dugout canoes. Like, you'd probably be able to, get your way around there, which we were also talking about how Göbekli Tepe's got some symbols that look oddly similar to Aborigine symbols.
Right. So talk about cahoots. These people
they could have walked there. I mean, they could have walked there. They could have like passed the message on. Like, who's, like now that opens this whole time frame thing would open up the door for people to be more in communication across that region and more regions. I mean, people were nomadic back then. They could get around,
Right.
So.
Where's Göbekli Tepe at?
Göbekli
Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey.
Okay.
So that's far. It's not a close, but so I mean, yeah, and like I think the research that they're doing was saying that like Sundaland and Australia were like the cradle of like the Asian genes, like people of Asian descent. That could have been, they said it could be like 50,000 years ago, so that's a long ass time.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, so the other weird thing though is that this is not the only piece of land that's like this. I think we're going to talk about here, but Doggerland, which I was explaining to you, it's also submerged, like land bridge that surrounds Great Britain, and I think what year was that? They say around like 6500 BC to 6200 BC is when there was either some massive tsunami, they believe, or some sort of incident where this thing was like kind of submerged, and then it was like fully submerged after that. So that's where
Yeah.
you get your current, Great Britain, Ireland, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm looking at
uh,
some stuff.
and that also opens up the door too to a lot of stuff. So like if you imagine, like people, um, from like Spain or Italy or whatever, were able to walk through Europe all the way over to there. So I mean that opens up. That's why people are so dispersed. I think that during that time there was a lot of like people, like seafaring stuff going on, or land bridges stuff, like that kind of, like, people were just on the move.
Yeah. Nice.
Dodgerland, I think they discovered at 1931 there was like a fisherman that was
Yeah.
like
1913.
1913.
I think
Well, there
so.
was a fisherman that was like trolling, and they pulled up some sort of like uh, pointed barbed antler, and then they started finding all these artifacts and stuff. So they know that people were living, and they found bones and stuff like that since then. But they know that people were living on this mass during the time. So maybe there was some great, catastrophe that happened too that completely submerged this thing. Maybe it was instantaneously, maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to shows that this Earth is just keeps changing and changing, and maybe we are in store for some fucking crazy shit.
Well, I mean,
Because I saw futuristic maps of what the U.S. would look like with if the fucking glaciers melted
right.
and Michigan was gone, Florida was gone,
I
California and
mean,
all that shit.
wait, Michigan was gone on that, the one that
Oh,
you
maybe
saw?
I don't know.
I
Maybe
th-
Michigan was all right. I think part of it was gone because the
yeah,
Great
maybe.
Lakes will swallow up some of it.
Right. Um, yeah, I think I've seen something like that too. And to be honest with you, that's what I mean. The Earth's like this like living entity. It's like it's
Yeah, for
gonna it's
sure.
gonna like do whatever it has to do to survive too. So if there's something, who's not to say that all this, stuff, this environmental stuff, isn't causing all these, earthquakes and all this stuff. The Earth trying to like shed all this shit.
Yeah, this map I'm looking at the water goes up to like Houston, but Michigan's good. We're safe. Or you're in Chicago. You should be safe too. It looks like that area. But like all like Seattle, Portland, that whole coast just goes
I already
all
built a
under.
big fucking boat.
He's gonna get animals 2 by 2.
Yep, I already got them. Animal crackers loaded up.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, the weird thing about what we're talking about though is the fact that even the stuff that we have, like ancient Greece, ancient, Egyptians, like there's stuff there and there's like a decent amount of it. But you
Right.
would think that all this time and all these people, like, and without having like some serious technology, like, where is everything? Like, where is, like what we were talking about, like the missing links, like where are all these bones? Where are these hybrid mammal bones? Where are these hybrid, like where we come from, like where, like Lucy, and like that's one thing. And like we found like Neanderthal stuff and all that stuff. But I'm talking about like there were supposedly people from, let's just say a million years ago, anatomically, maybe it was 500,000, whatever, an anatomical human, current human, where is everything? Don't you wonder why there's just like tons and tons of stuff? Like, how come we're not digging shit? There's the holes dug all the time. How come we're not finding tons of shit?
I don't know. I'm looking at some stuff online. Apparently, there are bones and shit that says these are the missing links between man and ape. But we're talking about the cognitive spark that Emerson was getting at, where we start to actually think for ourselves.
Well, there's a doubling of brain size, and some even say tripling of brain size. When did that happen? Because it's not. There's not. I mean, I haven't seen anything that backs that up.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a fucking. I can't get in depth on this shit. I don't really know. I didn't study bones. We gotta get our cousin Connor in this thing
Yeah,
because he'll probably light us up.
the bone collector. All right, well, let's move on to another actual ancient city, which some thought was mythical, but they found evidence to overcome that. Would be Troy, the ancient city of Troy from Homer's Iliad. German, I believe he's German, archaeologist Henrik Schliemann in 1871 supposedly found in Turkey what's known as Troy, or what we know as Troy from Homer's Iliad. But the weird thing about it that he found
I
was
thought that Homer's book was fiction.
it is,
Oh, okay.
but
But it's
just
based
like
on a true
Plato's
time.
thing could be fiction. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
based on some real stuff, whether it was hyperbolized or like made up to be this thing that it really wasn't or whatever. But it was still there. It's still, so he found this civilization. It had been built over, I think, like 10 times or something like that. Like they break it down. Like if you go online, Troy, when they discovered it, it's been built over like 10 times. So like there's Troy 1, which would have been 3000 to 2600 BC, Troy 2, which would have been 2600 to 2250 BC, Troy 3, which would have been 2250 to 2100 BC, and so on and so on,
Right.
until you get to, which I think, so like Troy 7, I think, is the one that we know as Homer's Iliad, the one from that story, which would have been the 14th century BC, like the Bronze Age time, kind of.
It says 1300.
Okay, so all right, so around there. So
You were close.
yeah. And then this other guy came back, this Frank Calvert guy who was an archaeologist, and he kind of proposed a 1,000-year gap between 1800 and 800 BC as being the dates of that empire, as opposed to what you just said. So I mean, there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. One guy found one thing, another guy did the research and found another thing. So I mean, I don't know who you would want to believe on that, but yeah, I mean that, like Troy, I mean, I'm sure people have seen the movie Troy and stuff too. The reason why they kept rebuilding it is just kept getting fucked up from wars and battles, and so like they were able to use some of the stuff from the story, like one of the walls they were looking for would have been a weak wall because of the way that the war happened and the people breaking through the wall and stuff like that. So
what about the horse?
that's a myth, I think, actually.
Yeah, it's
like,
gotta be a fucking myth. Dude.
Well, I don't think that really happened. I mean, like even I remember reading something or hearing something that how that wasn't real.
There's no way, man. I mean,
yeah. You're gonna
big
roll
old
this
horse.
you're gonna roll this massive wooden horse up to the door
with a ton of dudes inside.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, we're here. But yeah, I don't think that's correct. I think the last thing we're going to talk about here today is going to be Petra. Petra is actually really cool. If anybody doesn't know, it's like a Bedouin civilization, ancient. I think, what does it say? 4th century BC. And anybody that's seen Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, when they find like the place where the Holy Grail is, they're outside that, like, it's like an awesome temple that's built into a mountain.
Yeah,
like, cut out.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's El Khazne. Khazne.
Khazneh.
Yeah. And it
means the treasury.
And it's from, like I said, Indiana Jones 3, when they're pulling up to
incredible.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of those, and that's what they built their temples in, like huge rocks and mountain ranges and stuff. And the interesting thing about them is they were able to, so people would come in there and try and fight them. And since it's in like this, like one of the most dry deserts in the world, they somehow are like amazing at harvesting water. So they just wait it out. Like people just die just like trying to fight them while they're hiding, because they're amazing at surviving in these conditions, and like for instance, I think Greece sent like a whole, army to go like ransack them or take their stuff or whatever.
Yeah, they're like the sand people from fucking Star Wars. What are those guys called?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know but yeah, you're absolutely right. They actually kind of do remind you of that. But I think it's in Jordan too, or what's
Right.
currently Jordan. They're like part of the Nabatean kingdom. I don't know what that is. It's a nomadic Bedouin tribe. It's from northern Arabia, and I guess their inspiration for all these temples that are actually pretty beautiful were Hellenistic era stuff. So like like Roman and Greek architecture and stuff. So obviously they had either seen it or been in contact with those areas. But yeah, I don't know.
So what, this place doesn't exist anymore?
No, it does. It's still there.
Oh, okay.
It was just it's an interesting city that I don't think gets enough attention. Like it's beautiful, like you're looking at the pictures.
Cool. Yeah, we got to get pictures up on this cast somehow.
Yeah, we will. We'll figure that out soon here, folks, so we can get you some live action while we're talking.
This is an Indiana Jones though, where they.
It's an Indiana Jones 3, like The Last Crusade with Sean Connery.
Yeah, I've never seen that
looking
one.
for the whole. It's the best one, so you should check it out.
All
right. Either the first one or the last one, but I like the third one the best, The Last Crusade. But they're looking for the Holy Grail, and that's the temple where it is, and they meet with like a Templar knight that's been protecting it. It's like this old guy that's supposedly been living for like thousands of years, like protecting this thing. So,
but there's no facts based,
no, I mean, there's no real historical. I mean, look, I mean, that whole area, back during the early, like, Mesopotamia, Jordan, like that whole region, was important, for the cradle of civilization. So, I mean, I'm sure there's some sort of, importance there. I mean, there's nothing like mystical about it, I guess, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
In terms of like the history of it, or at least anything, at least anything I could find. But I just thought it was interesting because it is so pretty and like it doesn't really get talked about, and it's actually a UNESCO site, which is a protected heritage site, so it's obviously important.
Hell yeah.
But all right, folks. Well, I think we'll wrap this one up for you. Another one in the books, and the next episode we got coming on is episode 9. We got AI and cryptocurrency.
Hey.
All right, folks. We'll talk to you.
Peace.